Hi, in this video we will give an overview of how we can use the USB-6008 in LabVIEW. The USB-6008 is a DAQ device created by National Instruments, which is the same vendor as LabVIEW. In this video we will go through the following topics: a little bit about LabVIEW, what is DAQ or data acquisition, using the USB-6008 in LabVIEW, and using the USB-6008 and the analog inputs, and using the 6008 with analog outputs. And finally we will show how we can use data logging inside LabVIEW and in order to log data from the USB-6008 device. In this video we will need the following software. We need the LabVIEW Professional Development System, and we need the NI DAQ MX driver. This driver makes it possible to communicate with the USB-6008 device inside LabVIEW. The software can be downloaded from this link. Here you see an overview of the USB-6008 I/O module. Here we have the connection for the USB cable. So after you have installed LabVIEW and the DAQ MX driver, you can connect the device with your PC, and then the device should be ready to use. Here you have analog inputs and outputs, and here you have the digital inputs and outputs. For the USB-6008 DAQ device, you have 8 analog inputs and you have 2 analog outputs. In addition, you have 12 digital inputs and outputs. So the analog inputs goes from -10 to +10 voltage, while the analog outputs needs to be between 0 and 5 voltage. Before we start using the USB-6008 DAQ device within LabVIEW, we will just give a short introduction to DAQ. So here we see an overview of a DAQ system. Typically you need 4 parts. Number 1, you need 1 or more sensors. It could be a temperature sensor, etc. And then number 2, you need a DAQ device. In this case we will use the USB-6008 DAQ device from National Instruments. And number 3, you need a driver in order to communicate between the DAQ device and the computer. In our case we need the NI DAQ MX driver. And 4, when you have 1, 2 and 3 ready, you can start creating your application within LabVIEW in this case, or in another programming language. So now we will connect the USB-6008 DAQ device to the computer and see how we can use it within LabVIEW. So here is how you connect it. You just connect the USB cable between the USB-6008 device and the computer, like this. Next, you should open the Measurement and Automation Explorer in order to see if your DAQ device is installed properly. With this software that is part of the DAQ MX driver, you can easily configure and test if the device is working properly. So let's show a demo of how we can connect the USB to our PC and see if everything is working properly using the MAX software. So let's open the MAX software, Measurement and Automation Explorer. So here you see the Measurement and Automation Explorer software. And we just need to wait until the program is finished loading. And then when it's finished, we can go to Devices and Interfaces. And here we can see our device, in this case NI USB-6008 device number 2. We can connect more than one USB 6008 device, then they will be numbered like this, device number 1, 2, etc. So here we see we have connected device number 2. This device 1 is no longer connected, so you can in this case just delete it. Right click and click delete, and then instead we can rename this one to device number 1 like this. Next we can run a self-test to see if the device is installed properly. So it was successfully. Next we can run the test panels, and then we have the analog inputs here, the analog output, and the digital in and outputs. And here we can click start to see if everything is running as expected. So here, if I stop it, here I have selected the analog input channel 0, and then I can click start, and then you see the signal here. If I connect a 1.5 voltage battery, you will see the value is changing. So you see now I have connected a battery which has a voltage 1.5 voltage in this case. So the value is about 1.5 voltage, but you see it's a little bit noise here. But it seems to work as expected, so you can just stop it. In the same way, we can also test the analog output. So we can select the channel here. There are two analog outputs, analog output 0 and analog output 1. And then we can output, let's say in this case, 2 voltage. And then we can click update. And then we can use a multimeter or something to check if the output of this channel is actually 2 voltage. And then we can do the same in the digital inputs and outputs, but we stop there. And next we want to use the device within LabVIEW. When you install the DAQ MX driver, you should have this palette within the LabVIEW environment, the DAQ MX data acquisition palette. And here you have lots of VIs you can use to communicate with the DAQ device. In this video we will focus on the DAQ assistant. So here you see the DAQ assistant. So it's kind of a wizard, so you select step by step the thing you need to configure before you can use the device. Next, we want to use the USB 6008 together with LabVIEW in order to read analog input signals. So we need to use the DAQ assistant, and then we need to follow this step by step. So typically you need first to select analog input, and then we need to select the proper channels, and then next we need to set the range, and typically we also want to set one sample on demand for the kind of application we want to create. So here we see an example of an application we can create. So we are using a while loop, and inside the while loop we are using the DAQ assistant in order to read values from the DAQ device. In this example we will just hook up a battery, and in order to read the voltage from the battery. So let's create this example inside LabVIEW. So we open LabVIEW and we select File, New VI, and then we have the front panel where we create our graphical user interface, and we have the block diagram where we create our code. So in this case we want to just read the value from the DAQ device. We just need a numeric indicator like this, and then we can start creating our code. So we want or need a while loop like this, Also good to have or use a timer. You have different timers here. This one is the easiest timer to use. So you can just click it and use it here, right click on it and select create constant, and then you can select the value here. I select 100 milliseconds. Next we want to read values until we click a stop button on our front panel. So let's create the stop button here on Boolean stop button like this, and then we can wire the stop button to the loop condition here. Like this. And next we need to find the DAQ assistant, so you just right click here under measurement IO, you find the DAQ MX palette here, and here you find the DAQ assistant. So you just click on this one and put it on our block diagram. And now this wizard is opening, and then in this case we need to select, since we are going to read values inside LabVIEW, then we need to select acquire signals, and we are only going to read an analog input signal. In this case just the voltage from a battery, so you just select voltage, and then as you remember, the DAQ device has 8 analog input channels. In this case we just select analog input 0 and click finish. Then this window pops up, so here you can select one sample on demand, and then here we can select use the whole range or just select from 0 to 5 voltage, and then click OK. Like this. You can close this one, and then we can just wire the output from the DAQ assistant into the numeric indicator like this, and then we can run the program. Let's go to the front panel and click run. Now the value is close to 0, but let's connect a battery in this case to see what's happening. So now I'm connecting a battery, a 1.5 voltage battery, and in this case you see it is able to read the value from the battery. Now I remove the cables from the battery and it goes back to 0. In order to stop the program, I just click the stop button like this. If you go back to the block diagram, you see LabVIEW is automatically converting from this specific data type. If I click Ctrl H, you see this blue line is a dynamic data type, and this one is a double. You can also use this function here, so just search for this function and click search, convert from dynamic data. So let's select this function here and we place it on our front panel, and then this window pops up. In our case you just select single scalar and click OK. And in this case we can just remove this wire and put this one in between like this, and then you can wire the output here into the input of this block and the output here into this block. So now we have used this function in order to convert the signal from this specific data type to this double data type like this. You can run the program on more. I hook up the battery and you see the same results as previous. So that's how we use LabVIEW to get values from the DAQ device. Next we want to use one of the analog output channels of the USB-6008. So we use the LabVIEW DAQ assistant as in the previous example. In this case, we need to select, instead of acquire signals, we need to select to generate signals, and then select voltage, and then next select the channel. And since you have only 2 output channels, you need to either select analog output 0 or analog output 1. And then next you need to select one sample on demand, and the range is typically between 0 and 5 voltage. Here is the application we are going to create in this example. We use a while loop, and then we just set a numeric value on our front panel, and then we are going to write this value to the DAQ device. And in order to check if the DAQ device is getting the correct value, we can just use a multimeter or something to check if the value is actually the same as the value we set here in LabVIEW. So let's show how we can do this inside LabVIEW. So in LabVIEW we just create a new blank VI, and then we have the block diagram and the front panel. So let's start with the front panel. In this case we just need a numeric control. We need the same stop button, and then we can go to the block diagram. We create a while loop like this, and then we wire the stop button to the loop condition here, and then the signal we are entering here, we want to write this signal to the DAQ device, and then we need the DAQ assistant. So we find the DAQ assistant here, measurement IO, NI DAQ MX, and the DAQ assistant. In this case we need to select generate signals, analog output, voltage, and then we have these 2 channels. We just used analog output 0, click finish, and here we need to select one sample on demand and the range between 0 and 5 voltage, and then you can just click OK. And then we just wire the output of the numeric control to the input to the DAQ assistant like this. In addition, we should have this timer like this. Just right click and select constant and 100 milliseconds or something, and then our program should be finished, and then we can go to our front panel and we can click run to start the program, and then we can enter a value here between 0 and 5 voltage, since that is the range for the analog output channel. So we can type 3 or something, and now we can use a multimeter to test if the signals are actually 3 voltage. So here you see how I have connected the output channel 0 of the DAQ device directly through the multimeter. Black is the ground and red cable is positive. You see I was outputting 3 voltage from LabVIEW, and you see the output from the DAQ device is 3 voltage, as you can see on the multimeter. Next thing we can do is to connect the analog output cables directly to the analog input cables, a so-called loopback test. And then if we write 3 voltage to the DAQ device from LabVIEW, then we should be able to read the same value inside LabVIEW, since we are connecting the cables directly to each other like this. So let's test this and see how this is working inside LabVIEW. So now in LabVIEW we have made 2 programs. We have one analog output and we have another program called analog input. And then if we run these 2 programs at the same time, so let's click run on this program and we click run on this program, and then you see if we enter 3 voltage here, we are able to read the same value since the cables are directly connected to each other. So let's try to change it to to 4, and you see the value is changing to 4. Then go say, let's say 2, and then the value also here on the analog input is changing to 2. So this is a good way to test if the DAQ device and the analog output channels and analog input channels are working as they should. In this case, we have made 2 different programs, but of course we can also join these 2 the code from these 2 programs into one code. So let's try to do that. So now we have combined those 2 programs in one program. So we have the code for the analog output here, and then you have the code for the analog input here. Here we have used the convert from dynamic data. In this case, we could use the opposite, convert from dynamic data. Convert, in this case we need to convert to dynamic data, and if I can use this function, and here, the same here, it's a single scalar, so I click OK, and then we can wire this one between here. The output here should go to the input, and the output here should go to the input here, like this. And now we can try our program. So let's go to our front panel. In this case, we have the analog output here. So this value we are reading here, writing here, should be read, and the same value here, because we are wiring the analog output cables directly through the analog input cables. So let's try to run the program, and you see if we change this to 3, you can see that we are reading the same value here. Change to 4, etc. So as you see, it's very easy to use LabVIEW together with the USB-6008 device. So that's all for now. So good luck with the LabVIEW and the use of USB-6008 within LabVIEW.